Hey everyone, today on the Hot Dish Hustle, I am honored to speak with Peter Jeppson. Hey Peter, how's it going?
Terrific. Thank you, Gary.
Excellent, excellent. Hey, I appreciate you coming on. I know you're a busy guy and definitely in demand, and I appreciate your time.
Oh, delighted.
All right. Well,
Just
let's jump in here. I'm going to read a little bit about your background, and then we can talk about some interesting things that you've learned over your life, and some things that business owners can take to heart and leverage as well. So
sure.
we'll
Be
go ahead and
delighted.
dive in. So Peter Jeppson's life story is one of resilience, transformation, and financial wisdom. At the age of 19, Peter's world was turned upside down when he suffered severe burns in a devastating car accident. This traumatic event left him hospitalized for months, undergoing multiple reconstructive surgeries and facing enormous medical debts. During his recovery, Peter discovered a book called The Richest Man in Babylon that would change the course of his life. Applying the principles that he learned in the book, Peter managed to pay off his substantial medical debts in just 5 years, a feat that seemed nearly impossible at first. This personal triumph became Peter's foundation for his financial philosophy and his future career. Overcoming both physical and financial challenges, Peter transformed his experiences into a mission to help others. He's become a successful insurance salesman. He was elected to the president of the Salt Lake Association of Life Underwriters. He is dedicated to giving back, led by some of his volunteer work that he does at various burn centers. And he eventually now has become the national volunteer chairman for the Institute of Fire and Burn Education. In the finance world, uh, Peter's strategies focus on debt elimination, credit, creating passive income, small business growth, retirement planning, and financial education. Peter has also co-authored and authored several books, including the Peter Jeppson Story. He co-authored Money, What Financial Experts Will Never Tell You, and that was with Alan Williams and Sanford Botkin. And in terms of financial management resources, he contributed to Money Mastery, Principle-Based Money Management, your toolkit for financial fitness. So today, with over 50 years of experience in business development and financial mentorship, Peter continues to inspire others with his story and share his expertise, helping individuals and businesses alike navigate their path to financial success. Peter, that's a lot of stuff, man, over a very distinguished career.
Thank you, Gary.
Yeah, let's maybe start out, talk about that transformation in your life, that time when you were 19 years old and had everything in front of you and ended up in a car accident.
Oh yeah, just ever so briefly, but I bought a Volkswagen Beetle because it was so economical. They hold their values, German made, so the repairs are minimal. The gas mileage was excellent, and gaining a new month had just dropped off my date. I was attending Boise State University as a freshman, and as March, it was kind of cold and winter out, but I dropped her off and I thought, well, I'm going to fill up my gas tank because it goes 1 month. So I remember filling the gas can or my tank. Gas is up front on a Volkswagen Beetle. So
Yep.
I finished it up and I got it right to the lid and I put the cap on and a little bit of gas came out. So I was really pleased. I said, I can go a whole month without getting any more gas. Within just a mile, I got hit. Another guy was pulling out the other way on the freeway, and I was coming the opposite direction. We got mixed up in the middle of the lane, and our front ends hit. Our not straight head on, but off to the side a little bit. But a Volkswagen window is not bolted in; it's just popped in with some kind of a rubber coating around the edge, and they pressure it in. So when they hit, the window went out. The front end of the hood crumpled and the gas burst because it's plumb full, it was just totally. So when it hit, there's so much pressure, the gas came up the hood into the front windshield that no longer existed, cut me right in the face, down my back and my legs, and the flames exploded, and I just was engulfed in flames. I was knocked out, fortunately. So I didn't know this for many, many years. But I was with my lung doctor. I had a cold, and he was checking my lungs. He said, "Boy, your lungs are white. They're perfect. They're wonderful. How could that be? Because you obviously were in a fire." I said, "I don't know. I don't know what you mean." And he said, "Well, all burn victims I know, they breathe in hot, searing smoke, and it sears their lungs, and that's what they die from. They don't die from the burns. They don't have,
Yeah.
they don't last long enough for that." And so I go, "Oh, wow." And so I gave it some thought, called my mom and my mother, and I said, "Tell me about what happened." He said, "Well, you got knocked out. You don't breathe for about 4 minutes." So it took about 3 minutes for some passerbys to come and pull me out. So I never seared my lungs. I never breathed anything in until I was out in the cold air. So they hauled me into the hospital, and the doctor said, "Oh, it'll last a half hour." Because any burn victims they've ever had, they don't last very long because the searing, hot searing smoke sears your lungs. And so I didn't know that for many, many years. So I was fortunate in the sense I got knocked out, had a concussion, broke my jaw, broke my ribs. My leg got caught under the seat, and these three men that were passing by, they jumped out of their cars and they pulled and pulled and pulled. And they dislocated my leg and my arm. And so burned so bad, I lost 50% of my skin. And so as I fought for my life, I was in and out of a coma for several weeks. It was interesting. They didn't know my leg and arm were dislocated for several months because they were just worried about everything else, and so it was just kind of odd. So later, when they get my leg and my arm back in, one leg is half inch longer than the other leg. It's just kind of funny. So my pant legs always wore out on one side, but it's kind of a crazy because from there I was blind for quite a while, and I didn't know I'd ever see again. The doctors, because I lost everything on my face. I lost all the skin on the front of the nose, my ears, my lips were gone, and and the eyelids were gone.
Wow.
And so the doctor said, "There's no chance you'll see." About 4 months later, this eye doctor said, "Peter, we have no hope that you can see, but what we're going to do in this next operation is take the scar tissue off your eyeball itself." And they did. The next morning, they opened me up, and I could see 20/20 like I do today.
Wow, you are full of miracles, man.
Oh my God. So can you imagine losing the skin, but that thin retina, that is ever so thin. It had bubbled up. It had scar tissue on it. So that's what they took off, and they just kind of peeled off, kind of like a snake shedding their skin, that thin
Yeah.
hair that comes off. So they peeled that off, and then when they took the bandages off and I could see, and I go, "Oh my gosh." So I was covered up mostly for all the grafting surgeries and they would put my ear on. So I couldn't see for about a year longer, but I knew I could see. So, I wasn't so absolutely discouraged. But anyway,
Wow.
so that's the backdrop. But I had a lot of time to think. When you lay in a bed for a year and a half, mostly 7 months initially, and then in and out for another 3 years total. And so 28 major surgeries. And oh my gosh, obviously I became a professional patient.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
was,
Not something that a lot of people aspire to.
oh, oh yeah. Well, I don't know many people who've had 28 surgeries and they're still alive. It doesn't happen. But little things. When they grafted my skin on, they had to do a stitch underneath and then on the top. So that it was every time they had to do up and over, under and over, they call it. And in those days, they used the nylon, the plastic, it's really strong. Nowadays, they have dissolvable stitches, so they just in time to dissolve anyway. But
Yeah.
anyway,
Yeah.
I was, and so they tied it off, tied it off, tied it off. So I asked the doctor after about the fourth surgery, so how many stitches have I had? He said, "I don't know." I said, "Well, Can you count them? Will you count them for me? Because I mean, while I'm here, I might as well enter myself in the Guinness Book of Records, you know? I mean, I was joking, but and he said, okay. So a couple more surgery goes by, and he said, we can't do this anymore. I said, oh, shoot. He said, well, it takes a whole extra nurse just to count the stitches. He said, that's too expensive, and you're not able to pay the bill anyway. You're racking up a lot of debt. So we're not going to do that anymore. And I said, well, where did you leave off? And he said she left off a little over 3,000.
My goodness.
So when
3,000 stitches.
when the under stitches, see, they're under the skin. When it wore off, those little stitches would come out once in a while, for years to come. As I'm wearing down my outer layer, and I'd find these little like a pimple, and I'd pick at it, and it would be a stitch, and so I had stitches coming out. I mean, all over, for years, and that was just funny. Just a side note. I've never
Yeah.
told people that, but you have to develop a. I became good friends with Zig Ziglar and was on the speaking circuit with him for quite some time, and we were in the green room, and he was asking me about it, and he said, because he teaches an incredible principle, and that's, he talks about stinking thinking, talks about avoiding how to be negative thinking, And he said, Peter, what did you do? How did you get through the stinking thinking thing? I was like, well, I didn't get through it. No, I didn't at all. I was really down and out, and when I got my eyesight, then the whole world opened up, because I said, wow, this is amazing. So from that day up, Gary, everything was good. I mean, everything I was really in trouble and a lot of my surgeries and that. But you try to do without your eyesight. Just tell me how you feel about that.
Yeah. Yeah. I was just actually having that conversation with my wife the other night. She's a sign language interpreter, and she's actually worked with deaf blind clients, and I can't imagine being both deaf and blind. I mean, either one of those individually is enough, but being blind, I think, is probably one of the most difficult things for me, to overcome. I think it would be being blind. But well, tell us a little bit, Peter, about the book that kind of transformed,
Well, my brother,
kind of
my brother,
a pivotal point anyway. You mentioned the richest man in
yeah, yeah.
Babylon.
It's what helped change my stinking thinking. My brother's going to university. He's 4 or 5 years older than I am. So he ran across a book called Richest Man in Babylon. It's just a cute little book. The professor of economics at the University of Colorado, his name is George Clayson. He would write for the newspaper there in Denver every Friday for years and years and years. And he passed away in 1929, just when the Great Depression began. His family just thought it was such good words of wisdom that they assembled them into a book called Richest Man in Babylon. And it has become the number one seller of all time, personal finance. I don't know, 25 million copies or something by now. Uh, but my brother was really impressed with it. His finance professor told him about it, and he read it, and he said, "Peter, you got to read this." And well, I couldn't read, but I'd have it by my bedstand there at the hospital. And when my family would come, I said, "Read to me, read to me, read to me." So, it's really hard when everybody says, "How you doing?" Well, how you doing? Well, really great. How many times did you use the bedpan today? I mean, it's so boring. I mean, you get, I mean, I did a lot of act. I was a wrestler in high school. I was a water skier. I mean, it was to be stuck in a bed in a 24-hour period. You might sleep maybe 30 minutes at the most. And so long days, long days, long nights. And so if you're not careful, your thinking can be really, really negative.
Yeah.
And mine was, and I got really negative. I was learning to play the piano, and there was a song called "Be Thankful." It goes, it's talking about being thankful for your many blessings, count them one by one. And I said, well, I'm going to change the words, count your many troubles, name them one by one. And so my parents had just been divorced, and I said, burn, blind, broken, divorced, and I had a list going, and I wanted to get 202 of them. I thought I had that many problems. to match the page number that the song was on in the book. I mean, that's how boring it gets, by the way, Gary. So,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I developed a song and I do it at about midnight. Everybody shut down, all the medicines delivered, people are sleeping. And anyway, I had this neat friend. He was much older. He's in his late 60s, and he was a friend of our family's, but he just took a special interest in me. His name is Lawrence Oburn, and Lawrence would come and see me after work every day at 5 o'clock. So for the several months that I was in that Boise hospital, he never missed a day.
Hmm.
No, he's
Yeah.
not part of our family. He's just a friend. I mean, who does that? You
Yeah.
know, he would bring, because I broke my jaw and they wired my mouth shut for a couple of months, 3, 4 months. He'd bring me milkshakes, and because my these front teeth were knocked out and I could take anything through a straw I could have. And he'd bring these milkshakes all the time. And oh man, it was so fun. I mean, he was just so positive and so helpful. And but
Well,
one day,
that's kind of a great picture of, a mentor, right? I mean, and it's a little different because not everybody is in that situation, but when you find a mentor that really cares about you and wants you to succeed and wants to help you,
yes,
that is, invaluable in your life, and it transforms, people's lives. So I guess, kind of a side note here, I think mentorship and what you're doing by helping people with their finances, kind of continues to pay that back.
oh, indeed. One night he didn't show up at the usual hour at 5 p.m. after his work, and so I didn't think he was going to come, and got to be real late, like 11:30, 12, and so I started in my little song because as I sang my song, I get so depressed on my problems that I could wear myself down and I could go to sleep for an hour maybe. And an hour of being outside of all the pain and the agony. I mean, burn your finger, burn, a little piece of your arm. I mean, you take 50% of your skin is gone. The other 40% was first and second degree. I mean, I was totally wrapped like a mummy. I was, and they had to be taken off every 3 days because then you get infection underneath it if you don't. It had to be taken off, everything cleaned, and they couldn't get the bandages off because the blood and all the stuff would ooze into the bandage and stuck. So the only way they could do it is soak me in some water. Well, you put water on a raw flesh burn, it's like gasoline burning all over again. So it wasn't uncommon. I'd pass out due to pain, 15 times a day.
Wow.
They'd put me in this basket, lower me down like you take a car engine out of a car. They'd put me in this thing and they'd lower me in, and it was hell on earth. And I'd just because my mouth was shut, and if I got nauseated and would throw up, and then I couldn't breathe, so they put a tracheotomy here in my throat. So one time they were lowering me in this thing, and I was going into the water, and of course I just couldn't hardly stand it. But they forgot to plug my tracheotomy. So water was just coming pouring into my lungs, and I go, oh crap. So I didn't know what to do. So I thought I'd better breathe in some water so I could push it out like a whale in the ocean, and so that's what I did. And when I went whoosh, with as much as I could, the water went all over the nurse that wasn't really paying attention to me. And that she caught her attention. She then pushed the button to put it back up. So it takes forever to go down. You push the button, you go down so slow. So now she pushed the button, I go up real. So in the meantime, I'm drowning, I'm just, I'm just dead. So I get up, they took me over and they, get the water out and it really, really is. It's just crazy little things like that happen all the time. So anyway, back, I was singing this song at night, count your many troubles, name them one by one. And Lawrence had showed up. He was there at my door. I didn't hear him, and I didn't know he was there. And he was shocked of my language. And Peter, he just got really angry. And Gary, this is a turning point in my life. I got to tell you, it's about why I do everything I do. He just Peter, he yelled at me and he stopped me in my tent, and I knew that I'd lost my trance, so I wouldn't be able to sleep. and not to sleep was like a real problem. And because I needed I needed some peace, in my life. Anyway, he said, Peter, you have no right. You've been given so much. You have no right to be so act like you're spoiled brat. And I go, oh, really? And so I got mad back and I said, okay, Lawrence, you come and get in this bed like I am, and you're burned, and I'm not. I'm by the door, and I'll tell you it's what's on the inside that counts.
Yeah.
Silence, just dead silence. And I could tell he was crying, and I was too, under my bandages. And then all of a sudden he said, Peter, he said, if I could, I would. And that's when I knew that man truly loved me.
Yeah.
He left. I never thought he'd come back. All through the night, the next day, you got to know, I felt like a real heel. I felt so bad. I committed then and there that when he comes back, I would do everything he asked, if he did come back. And he came back yet the next day, 5 p.m. right after work, just as pleasant, positive as ever. And I said, well, you get your cap and gown on. And I was in isolation because of all the potential infection. They hadn't got the skin grafting done for months. So I was always exposed. And he got his cap and gown on and sat by me. And then I said, what would you have me do, Lawrence? And he said, you need to keep a journal. And I said, well, let's see, how am I going to do that? I can't see, I can't write. My hands are all burned. They're all wrapped. He said, look, he said, I'll help you and your family can too, but you need to keep a journal. And I said, well, what is that? I mean, I was real negative. I said, how many times I use the bedpan in a day? I mean, how does this stuff work? So I was so naive, so innocent, so stupid. But and he took me under his wing and he said, no. He said, I'm going to teach you about having a creed. I said, a creed. He said, it's kind of like a constitution, like the Constitution of the United States. It's like something that's a rock solid principle, like gravity. You get up in the morning, your leg doesn't go to the side of your room, doesn't go to the roof, the ceiling. It comes down, and you can count on it. The sun comes up. There's absolute laws of the universe. And he said, when you have a creed, so that you've established what you want your life to stand for, what you want your life to be like. So you're dead, you're in a funeral, you're in the casket. What do you want your life to stand for? He said, so that's your creed. You can have 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 parts of the creed. So I started with 6 that he gave me. And I expanded on them. So I now have 10, and I've had 10 for all these years. I'll be, this next spring, it'll be 60 years. Next 60 years. But I have had, so you can say setting goals, and setting a goal is kind of trite. It isn't exactly a goal. A creed, I haven't attained it yet, but my creed, being organized, what's that? What's that mean to me? Well, so when you write down a creed and you say, he said, now be it as if you were. I said, I am organized. I have a place for everything, and I have everything in its place. Now that's a statement on being organized. Okay. And being organized is important to me. And it is one of my creeds, but, and so what happens then when you have a creed, you review it every night and every morning. After a while, it's memorized. So my 10, I probably have, about 100 words, maybe 125 words total. But since it's memorized, I get up in the morning, I'm not even getting out of bed, and I review my creed right now, because my day is going to be built upon what my creed stands for, what I want to be. So I'm not perfect. And my wife has looked at my creed many times. She says, honey, you're not this person. I said, yeah, I know, but without the focus, I wouldn't even be a fourth of where I'm at, in terms of being kind and being of a service to other people, and that kind of thing. So here's Lawrence. He's teaching me about this thing. So I keep track. I mean, I have my family, we create, and I couldn't set a goal. I didn't know what kind of what could I do? Nothing. I can't move. I can't go side to side. I can't get up. I can't walk. I can't see. So anyway, we locked onto one thing, and that's something I could do. They have to be attainable. You have to be able to do it. So it came down that I could be more enthusiastic and not negative, like count your many troubles, name them one by one. And so I was okay. So we locked onto that. And little things happen. There was a young man about 15 years of age. He was in the orphanage, and they took the boys camping, and they put the wrong kind of gas in a Coleman lantern, and it exploded, and it burned him really bad down his left side. All of his skin on the left side, all the way down past his hip, 3rd degree. And so it was bad for sure, not near as bad as but anyway, he was so negative. I mean, he'd yell. I could hear him. He was in the room next to me, but I could hear him. And nurses would come out of there just crying, and they would come into me, and they'd sit down, and they just wanted to be with me for a while to kind of cool down. And so this young man, boy, what a task. I often thought about him, but one day my doctor came in and he said Elliot had died, this young man, and he just passed away. And I said, "What?" I said, "Well, he's not burned anywhere near as bad as I am." He said, "So why aren't you telling me?" And he said, "No, Peter." He came in. The only place I wasn't burned is right with my elbows on both sides. And he came and grabbed my elbow with his 2 arms, and he squeezed it hard. And he said, "Peter, he didn't have to die." It's the first time I ever even thought you can control whether you die or not. I go, "What do you mean?" He said, "Peter," he said, "you have so much more going for you. And you have a God, you have a family, you have your creed." They they began to become very familiar with my creed, if you mind being enthusiastic in that. And he's, but this young man, he didn't have anything, and he had nothing to live for, and he willed himself to die.
Hmm.
And so that was another turning point. So Lawrence, talking about building a creed that you could focus on the person you want to be, and work on it and become that person, or more like it, more like that person. And the other thing is to, when you do that, you watch yourself grow and develop. So I would screw up. I made errors in judgment and whatever, but as I kept track, I can go back today. I can go back 38 years, and I can read in my thing, and I can see one sentence, 2 sentences reminds me of at least 10,000 thoughts that I was thinking of at the time. And so for those in business, you need to build a business plan and keep track. You need to keep a journal on your progress of what you're doing. And you need somebody to hold you accountable.
Yeah.
And so same thing in business, makes no difference. And so when I was burned so bad and I got out of the hospital, I needed I needed more work done. My doctor was very limited, and he got the grafting done in my back and my legs and that, but he didn't know what else to do. And he said, "I'm done. I can no longer do your surgeries." I said, "What? You're going to leave me like this?" And he said, "I don't know how, Peter. I don't know." He gave me some recommendations of a doctor in Portland, one in Spokane, and one in Salt Lake City. And so my family and I called the one in Portland. And he said, "Oh, sure. No, I know how to do that. I know how to put eyelids on. I know how to put tear ducts in. I know how to put lips on. I can do that." And he said, "Who's your insurance company?" I said, "Well, I don't have one." He said, "Well, who's paying the bills?" And I said, "Well, they're not being paid." He said, "Well, when you get that figured out, you call me." So I called Spokane, same thing. So as I hung up with Spokane doctor, I said, "Oh, I got to do this thing a little bit different." So the third one, and that's the reason I'm in Salt Lake area. I call a Salt Lake doctor. There's 2 of them. These two together. One does the flat work, one's the detail, but together they can do more than any other doctors that I had interviewed. Anyway, so they said, "Oh, sure, we can do that." And he said, "When can you come down and we'll examine you and we'll tell you what we can do?" So I set the day. I barely was able to walk, barely got out of the hospital. I went right to the train depot. I started at 5 in the morning, all day long. I got here about 8 in Salt Lake area, the Rio Grande. I walked up to their office, did the whole thing. They took all kinds of those pictures, and then printed it up, broadcasted it up on the whiteboard. Took red, and they told me, "said Here's where we're going to cut. Here's what we're going to do." I mean, it was a glorious plan, and I said, "Oh my gosh, that's awesome! That's great." And they said, "Okay, who's your insurance?" I said, "Well, I'll get that together, and I'll be back to you." And they said, "Okay, great. Well, we'll be waiting for you." So I walk down to the train depot. I get on the train. I get home back, and the train was very close, a block from the hospital. So I walk back to the hospital. I'm dead. I'm just as about exhausted as you can be. But I was thrilled that someone could actually take me to the next level. And so Lawrence Overton came the next day. I told him what had happened, and he said, "Oh, well, let's get you the health insurance." I said, "Oh, really?" I mean, I mean, at
Talk
that,
about a pre-existing condition, right?
yeah, exactly, exactly. Now that I'm in the insurance and now that I know all this stuff, I learned. And so I said, "Oh, yeah, well, right." And so he was the vice president of Safeway stores for all of Idaho. And he called the warehouse in Salt Lake City, and his name is Harry Pickering, that brings in all the rail cars and all the trucks, and they unload it in this big, huge warehouse, and then they fill orders to all the stores.
Yeah.
And so the darndest thing is I go there, I walk, so I get a job. So it took me several months to finish up in Boise. And I got down here. My brother was going to the university, so he had a place to put me in a room. And I wasn't going to be in that room very often anyway, but so he was so helpful. Anyway, I show up at Safeway's warehouse. I weighed 92 pounds. I could not lift more than 10 pounds. And yet they had me come in here in the freight car, and they had Seagull milk, 48 cans. It weighs about 42 pounds. I weighed it later, so I know. So 42 pounds. And they only go too high in the train car, and they glue them down. So they put cardboard down, glue it, put another cardboard on, glue it, and put another layer of cases on. So the point is they don't shift and they don't bend all the cans when the train gets slammed a little bit. Anyway, so I was trying to pull it off, just one case off of the stupid glued cardboard, and I couldn't move it. And yet they hired me to do empty boxcars and gave me health insurance.
Wow.
The guys I was working with, they thought I was a total waste. And so I had to endure some disdain for sure. Anyway, but what's so cool about it is that I'm a quick study. I know numbers really well. So I memorized the numbers where the say Kellogg's cornflakes would go and so forth and so on. And I learned to drive the forklifts really quick, and that was no big deal. The other guys don't ever drive a forklift unless you have seniority of 10 years or more. So here I'm driving a forklift, and the guys just hated my guts because I didn't have tenure. I was just a punk kid. But because I had memorized, because it's just how I do things, we would get our work done in half the time, and they could sit in the train car and just smoke. And so they thought I was great because they would be lazy as could be. Anyway, but they were good friends. They became great friends, Gary.
Yeah.
And here I am knowing I'm going to get a college education. I'm going to get a college education. Because it's just the difference is amazing. So back to Richest Man in Babylon, there's a chapter called The Clay Tablets. And it talked about a guy got in debt, put in debtor prison. So up until these modern times, like we are in the United States, when you were in debt and couldn't pay it, you were put in prison. And until you could sell a child to slavery or a wife, or they could earn enough money to pay your debt for you, you were in prison. It's called debtor's prison. That's what's referred to all down through the Bible, all down through ages. So this George Clayson, the author, economics professor at the University of Colorado, he went back and did all the research, and so there's this fellow who's just getting out of debtor's prison, and he said, I don't know how I'm going to pay off my debts. There's quite a few remaining. So he said, I'm going to pay on my debts. When one's paid off, I'm going to take that payment on to the next debt. Now we know it's a snowball effect, or you power down, or however you want to put it. Point is, so I learned that from the book. And in my mind, good with math again. So I took all my debts, 3 hospitals and several doctors, and I said, okay, there's this much debt. If I put that, I'll pay that off, use that payment to this. So if I could just make enough money to make the payments, when one's paid off, just keep the same payment going until it's off. And it came out to be 5 years. I said
Wow.
that in my mind. And I said, that's not right. So it took me another year to get out and get my hands working and my fingers. 9 of them got broke. You can see the ones down the middle and split. Anyway, so I've got it. I finally got this. My pen, paper. I do it. Math, time value of money formulas, and it said 5 years. I said, no way. The math said 5 years. So I started living it. I worked my butt off. Nobody would hire me because I didn't look presentable. So my uncle was really talented on painting and fixing up cars and redoing engines, and I had, as a teenager, helped him, so I knew a little bit about that. And so anyway, he helped me get my first car, a '57 Chevy, and we maybe candy apple red, and the 283. We souped it up and put a Hearst transmission in it that you could shift so fast. Anyway, and I made $600. Now that's like at least 6 to 10 grand today. So
Yeah.
oh my gosh. So I started hyperventilating, and so I did it again and again and again. So I didn't get a job. Nobody would hire me until so Lawrence Overton did while I got my my health insurance and got my work done. But then I said, I got to do something to really make, I got to make some money. Anyway, so that's what I did. I learned how to be a business person first and foremost. And so as soon as I finished up with the operations and that, I've never been a W-2 employee since then, in all these years, because I find that it's kind of like you're out there in a rowboat in the ocean, maybe football field out, and a big wave hits you, you tip over, and now you're treading water. And see, if you can't tread hard enough so you can get your head up and look over where the shore is, and then use your energy while it lasts before you get too tired and drowned, if you can swim towards the shore, you have a chance. And so when you have a power down their debt, when the richest man in Babylon taught me the principle how to do that, and I did it on paper and I lived it, oh my gosh, that was like, so within just 6 months, I was right on task. Within 1 year, I was exactly on the numbers. In 5 years, I was exactly. So I made a commitment that I didn't know how I was going to meet a young lady and, fall in love and get married, but I said, I'm not going to do that until I'm out of debt. So I was able to get that going. Had about 6 months left when I did get engaged to be married. And the day I got married, I paid off my last debt. And because of the power down, so I'm in business for myself, so I'm making more money, far more money than if I was a W-2. So at the time, I thought, well, if I become a manager of a Safeway store, because I'm learning the ropes now, the grocery business, and so it was just interesting how God prevails. I firmly know and feel God's support every step of the way. When I would get discouraged, I'd feel the warmth and the love, and said no. And then when I'd ask him what about going to Salt Lake City, and it was confirmed. And so all the way along, how would I ever meet a young lady that would accept me for what I am? And I got in a service place where we did some community service with my wife to become, and we worked side by side for about a year and a half before we even considered dating. Became good friends, and so she knew me so very well. And I said, hey, Marge, how about if we go on a date? She said, no, I don't want to ruin a good friendship. So, but little by little, I was able to work that out, and that's a long story. But we got married and have 5 wonderful kids. And so I look back on those dark days, stinking thinking, blind, going to be blind forever. those are dark days, but being sustained through that with a warm feeling that God's in charge is like everything. And then everything's worked out. It's just amazing. So, you throw on early on in my life, 19, to get a creed, to actually see clearly who you want to be and what you want to stand for. And you
Hmm.
do that morning and night, morning and night, morning and night, forever. And keep a journal entry so that when I really messed up, I regrouped, got back up. I fell down. I got back up. When little by little, within 10 years, 20 years, I can see for myself, by myself. I'm like 15,000 feet up in the air looking down on myself and saying, I'm pretty resilient. I'm really, I have a bigger picture than just today, this week, this year. And so uh, so my business did real well. I was able to sell it. I did another. So I really have uh, tried to be really. I find that business owners are excited about doing well and doing their thing, and they've got a unique talent, and to be able to expand upon that and become successful. But they lose sight if they don't have a specific way of saying, okay, here's my family, my life, my business, and how to balance that.
Hmm.
That's really what is the hardest part for all of us.
Yeah, yeah, I agree with that. I mean, there's so many lessons in what you've shared, Peter, already, and we could go on forever. But you know, one thing that strikes me is we can all be that mentor to others as well. So yeah, it was important, that you were visited every day when you were in the hospital. That was a key component of you, turning that moment around in your life. I don't want to underestimate how we can do that for others. Meaning, if you're in business today and you are successful, you always got to pay that forward, right? I mean, that is where fulfillment, in my opinion, that's where fulfillment comes in,
You're
right? When
right.
that comes
That's
full
it.
circle, and then you can see that other person really become who they're destined to be as well. So that's a really important principle. Um, if you don't mind, Peter, give us this is kind of a business podcast, and we've kind of gone off into the ether a little bit, which is great. I love it. But tell us a little bit now about business. What are some of the principles that people really need to think about that they don't often think about in terms of their business?
Yeah, good point. In my experience, after coaching thousands of businesses for many, many years, I retired 10 years ago, and then I just have so many wonderful clients that need, just want to help follow up and just touch them and make sure that they're still on track. So so yes, I do work, but I'm not active at it, meaning I don't spend 40 hours a week at all. I really enjoy 17 grandkids. I really enjoy, doing things with them, and oh my, what a blast I'm having. Uh, and my own children, two sons, and their businesses, it really help them, and they thrive. They've doubled and tripled their growth. So here's some lessons that I see that they don't have a specific business plan. They don't have, uh, even if they don't even know what they want to do. $1 million of revenue, $5 million in revenue, whatever it is, they need to start with a specific goal and an activity out there. At least a 1 year plan, a 3 year, a 5 year, and even a 10 year plan. And even in one sentence, it doesn't have to be in depth, but they need to have a vision of where they're going. Let's just take a map. The United States, everybody knows that you put a star down where like St. Louis would be. You don't have the states identified or the cities, just a map of the United States and a star. But there's two things you need to know how to get to the star. Where is it? Is it in St. Louis? Or is it in Des Moines? Or, where am I going to go? Where's my goal or my objective? And then where are you on the map? So if you're in Seattle and you know you're going to St. Louis, you can actually get a plan. But if you have a bridge out in Wyoming on Highway 80, I mean, you can change. You can go around it and that. But if you don't know you're going to St. Louis, you're going to go all over and you're never
Yeah.
going to go anywhere. And so in the cartoon Circus, it's really funny. Once in a while, mom will say to the little boy, go get your dad for dinner and blah, blah, blah. And these dotted lines follow him all through the neighborhood. And he played basketball here and he did this, and he comes around. And finally, there's dad. And then by the time he leaves his father and he goes back in, his dots just go all over the neighborhood, and I see that and I say, boy, that's what I see in business owners. They're not clear about where is my star. And then they don't get current on where am I? Am I Maine? Well, if I'm in Maine to St. Louis is a little different trip than Seattle, to St. Louis. So that's a huge, gigantic lesson. Okay.
Yeah.
And another lesson, big time for businesses, is to know the rules. Take a dice, throw the dice out there, and you can see a 3 line on the side. What's on the back side of the 3? Do you know?
I want to guess 6.
It's a 4.
Okay.
The rules on dice say opposite sides always add up to 7.
Okay. Yeah, makes sense. I should have known that.
Throw the dice and there's a 1 on the top. What's at the bottom?
Well, it'd be a 6.
Right. So once you know the rule, isn't it easy?
Yeah.
Okay. So many times in business, you're going to go to a bank for a loan or whatever. You don't know what's on the backside, but you can see what's on the front. So if you know the rule, you don't even have to wait 3 years to find out what's on the backside. You can't pick it up and turn it over to see, oh, it's a 6. I can see that. But many times you can't see that. But if you know the rule, then you know what's on the other side. And so to get a rule, it's very important. I have I have a lot of these. These are called red pens, red ink. And so let's suppose you just got your auto insurance policy. You sit with your agent with red ink. If you don't want to mark up the formal policy, it's okay. Just duplicate it, whatever. But then you take this red pen and you talk with him and you go down and whatever he says, you're the one that's writing in red ink and you all over it. So say 2 years go by, your daughter has an accident. You want to know about your insurance policy. You can pull out the red ink and you look down through, oh yeah, I remember this, I remember that. And so by redlining, you've just now been proactive. And so when I reviewed it with my insurance agent on my car insurance, I just learned the rules. And I know then what the rules are. And so as time goes down the road, let's suppose my daughter has an accident, we resolve the issue and everything's taken care of. I know what number to call. I know how to make a claim. I know how to do this. So my red ink really directs me because it's my writing. I can write one sentence. So I told you, I can look back in my journal about my creed at what I 38 years ago and what I wrote, and I can read 2 sentences and I can remember all these 10,000 thoughts. So same thing. So when you know the rules, you may not know the rules, but you then put forth an effort to learn them. Don't just take the insurance policy and put it in your drawer. Now it's flat. I got my hand out here flat. Okay, the next important thing, this goes on top, flat, 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 flat. Okay, now after a while you say, I really need to get that organized. And you're looking at that drawer or 2 drawers or your trunk of your car or the garage or your car closet door or whatever. And everything is piled up and you say, oh man, I'll do that later. I'm not going to. So you're never really, truly getting to understand and know the rules and have them easily accessible in terms of making a good decision. So they waste time, poor decisions. That's called not knowing the rules. It's really incredible. Another thing that's so huge is I've learned over the years that the rules I'm talking about, the rules are always changing. It's one thing to know them. I keep track. They print in May every year how many tax law changes was made the year before. The average, 1,200. 1,200 rule changes from year to year to year. You look at the IRS code, the code book. I mean, it's just thousands of pages. I mean, how can anybody know them? It's impossible. And so since you know that you can learn the rules, be really proactive there, redline everything. I don't care what it is. So you always have immediate recall. And then know that the rules change. And when they change, go again, maybe use a different color, not red, maybe green or blue, whatever. But so that you date it and say, okay, 7 years later, I'm dating it, and this changed, I did it. And so you always then have everything. Now, what I've learned to do is I show it to you here, but I have a great scanner, double-sided, color, and fast. And so I can mark it up, blue, red, green, whatever I want, scan it, and then it's in my, it's in my cloud. Okay.
Yep.
Now you're watching, but let me show you what I do then. It syncs with my iPad.
Yeah.
So if something needs to change, I just open this up and I say, okay, let me go to that document. Incidentally, I use what they call notability, and you can then pull it over just any scanned document, you pull it in. I'm going to show it to you, but here's what I'm working on right now. So see the red?
Sure.
Okay, so I can do more red, and I can do green or color. I can highlight it with. So in other words, I only want to touch something once. I don't want to try to find it in a drawer flat with everything on top of it. I don't even remember which floor it's in. Okay, so think about, I just said, always look at the big picture, see the whole thing. Find out where you really determine where you want to go, St. Louis, and find out that you are in Seattle. Now you got a plan. Okay, that's cool, but it might change. The bridge might be out, things like that. Okay, but because things change all the time, what doesn't change? The weather, the health, what doesn't change? Okay, so go on and on and on. But so I'm talking about personal organization in your own life, but also in your business. And so in the last thing is really fun. I mean, tons of lessons, but it's money in motion creates more money. These are also found in Richest Man in Babylon. About Richest Man in Babylon are incredible principles, but they don't tell you how to do anything. So I love the principle, but then I had to go out and search the Lawrence Oberns in my world and everybody else that actually knew, how to implement the principle. It says, number one, it says control thy expenditures. Okay, well that's cool. How do you budget? How do you? You can many different ways, and so I learned some cool ways. So I created my own money mastery principles and how to do those, and that's what I offer personally. And so this book I co-authored with my tax attorney, Sandy Botkin. The title says this: Money, What Financial Experts Will Never Tell You. Mm-hmm. What they can't tell you is that it has nothing to do with money. When I lost my face and I went to a college dance, I asked a girl to dance and another, and they all said no. Well, that was an interesting experience. You see, a lot of people, even now, you would think I felt really ugly. I felt dejected. Well, when you were laid in the hospital bed for a couple of years, and you're just happy to be able to walk, and you didn't have eyes to see, and now you can see, someone can tell you, no, I don't want to dance with you, and I can understand why. I don't look presentable, but I did it anyway, just because I just made a commitment in my creed that I would learn how to get past all that and not judge the person, and not for me to ever judge a person by looks. I'll always. So when Lawrence Obern said that one night, said, Peter, you have no right to act like this. You've been given so much. And I said, oh, yeah, really? But he's always telling me, Peter, it's what's on the inside that counts. But you see, I just thought he was trying to lie to me purposely. It took me several years to figure that out, that it really is what's on the inside that counts. And so how you develop your character is decide what you want to stand for in various areas of your life: physical, spiritual, financial, mental, emotional, and community, meaning service. So decide where you want to be with all that, and then focus on it, and then get better at each of them. So you get better, and watch yourself grow because you're keeping a journal. So when people don't have a plan, don't keep track, how can they possibly remember? What's the old saying about history? If you don't know it, you're going to repeat it,
Yep.
over and over and over. So you look at all the great societies. Look at all of them. They didn't learn, and they went by. A great congressman, our state congressman, Chris Stewart, wrote a book called The Seven Tipping Points in History. Amazing. He identifies only 7 times in the history of the world, the known world that we know of, the history of all time. Only 7 times were the people independent, a democracy in control of their destiny. 7 times.
Mm-hmm.
And of those 7 times, none of them lasted more than 25 years until the United States.
Yep.
Now that just hit me like a bolt. So you got to be kidding me. So if you had a good king, you had some pretty good times. If you had an evil, wicked king, if they didn't like you, it'd string you up and hang you. But so it's rather fascinating with this experiment that we have in the United States. Just this week, transfer of power. We the people, who are in control. And that is just it's a remarkable experiment that we're going through, don't you think, Gary?
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, you think about it, it's been 250 years,
Mhm.
versus those others that haven't lasted 10% of that. I mean,
Yeah, right.
we live in a day and an age and in a place, and I don't think people really understand how blessed they are.
Yeah,
Now, to your point, you could even be in a hospital bed, in a burn unit, um, lost your sight, lost your ability to use your hands. We still live in a society that is better. Better is kind of you need to define that, but better than a vast majority of the people in the world live.
yeah, no
Um,
kidding, Gary.
so, I think we need to count our blessings in terms of what the opportunity is for us.
Well,
And to add on to that, I think that it's beyond just where we live; it's the opportunities that we have. So I would just encourage everyone, maybe as we close this out, um, encourage everyone to hang on to that. I love the idea of a creed. I love the idea of a journal. I'm horrible with it. I love the idea of planning, mentorship. We touched on a lot of things here, Peter, and you illustrated them very well. And I want to say that I appreciate that. Is there
sure.
any one last thing that you want to leave us with today?
I was just recently reading General Eisenhower, who really was the instrument in putting together the plan to fight in World War II against Hitler and Japan and all of that. And here's his quote, and then I'll explain it slightly. But he said, "Plans are worthless, but the planning is indispensable." So couple that with Mike Tyson when he said, you can have the best plans going into a fight, and they all go out the window the second you get punched in the nose. So Eisenhower, again, plans are worthless, but the planning is indispensable. So he set up all these plans, but once you're in the war, you're the soldier, you're the one that's getting, in the line of fire. I mean, you just got to do your best, but the planning behind it is what sets you up to be successful. And so personally, set up a creed, keep a journal. Business, set up a business plan and keep track. Financially, set up your finances and track. When you track it, you control it. That would be my ending comment. Just because you really truly can be in control, but you got to kind of track it. Kind of know. Again, here's what I think. That's the planning. Here's what happens. and you compare. You do that over and over and over and over. You'll go up and down and make some mistakes, but by and large, you'll make progress right up.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, Peter, thank you so much for your time today. I appreciate you. It's so nice to have met you, and I look forward to chatting with you some more.
Delighted. Thank you,
All
Gary.
right. Take care. Thanks so much.